Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch. Okay, so to catch you up, Bartise has said they all met with their families. All the couples met with all the families, and it was interesting. There were some minor details that we learned about the individuals' lives, but there wasn't really much for me to react to. But now we're seeing a scene with Nancy and Bartise is saying that his sister was skeptical about the relationship, and that influenced him, and he's saying now that he doesn't have any attraction to Nancy. He's framing it in a sense of it being physical, but a lot of people and men are socialized to be this way, that when men are feeling distance or when they're feeling an urge to be with a partner, that dichotomy between repulsion and attraction, men will interpret that through a sexual lens. It's hard to know if that's accurate or not, individual to individual, but I will hear men using this kind of language. Bartise is kind of using that language. The questions I would have for him, because he was saying, I'm no longer feeling any sexual attraction to her, and I need to feel sexual attraction to someone to want to be with someone. And the things I would ask him is, well, what other kinds of feeling, when you say sexual attraction, I can imagine what that entails in an explicit way, but can you tell me more of the nuances of that? And because I'm guessing for him, I don't know, but for a lot of people, what's happening is they're experiencing a feeling of longing for someone, an experience of warmth towards someone. They want to hug them or be with them or something, look into their eyes. And it's might we call it a non-sexual attraction. You want to bond, you want to have intimacy, you want to feel close, you want to feel secure, you want to feel accepted and loved and that intimate warmth. But because men are socialized to downplay those kinds of emotions and to find them to be feminine or weak or something, they will interpret all of their longing for someone through a sexual lens. And I don't know if that's the case for Bartise, but he seems to possibly be in that camp because he frames everything in that sense, right? When he was talking about Raven, anyway. Now, I suspect for Bartise, it's just not really there. The spark, it just isn't there for Nancy. Now, might he be overvaluing looks and undervaluing emotional connection? It's possible. I don't know, but at the very least, Nancy deserves someone that loves her, the whole her, and, the entire her, right? And wants to be with her. And so they've been post-honeymoon living together, and she's feeling that distance. She's now, I think, realizing that it's over. So this is interesting. I wonder, do they end up going to the altar, or do they just call it quits here? Because it looks like that would be the way to go.
I feel like before he would give 10 forehead kisses in a day, and now it's like 1, maybe 2, even today when I said, hey, can I have a hug? And he said, you're so needy. And he was joking, but I was like, okay, but like.
Yeah, so she felt distant and she wanted to not feel distant, I'm thinking, or had a longing for a hug and asked for that, which is good. And he made a joke, but might be communicating something. You're so needy, meaning I don't really want to hug you in this moment, or you seem invasive, or I feel forced socially to be with you. I don't know, but certainly things seem to be heading in that direction. So she's feeling that, and it's hurting. Now, what I'll say is, that first day that they met and they're talking in bed, and how the way he framed his reaction to Raven and his reaction to her, it's like, it's not a surprise, but, Nancy wanted it to work, and we didn't see what was going on behind the scenes, but I'm certainly not surprised by what's happening.
So I didn't think it was a lot that I was asking for. Like, I know who I am, and I'm gonna keep doing what I do, and I'm gonna keep being the person that I am. It might take a couple days to bounce back, but like, I want him to love me just as much as I love him.
Yeah. So a lot of people watching this will think that she's pathetic or that she is a doormat. She should just walk out. Why is she trying so hard? And I am not a fan of that perspective. When you're in love, you're in love, one. Two, when you're in love, you want to give it a try. You want to do what you can to make it work. If every time that we fell in love with someone and we're in a relationship and you have a couple bad days, you're like, yeah, I'm out. If we did that every time, we would never have any relationship, not just romantic, but we wouldn't have any friend relationships or coworkers that we bond with or family, there are bad moments. So now from us on the outside, me included, watching it, it's just like, I can't see this working. Who knows? It's edited in a certain way. I mean, can we imagine Bartise turning the corner and being like, no, I am attracted to her and I am in love with her? But some people, I will talk with them in this situation. More often what I'm dealing with in my practice is there'll be someone that married 10, 15, 20 years, and they come to me and there's been a lot of distance over time, and they are trying to figure out what to do. And so we'll sift through it, and they might get to a place where they're thinking, yeah, there's really nothing there. I'm not getting any kind of effort from my partner. We've worked on things in couple therapy, and it just doesn't seem like they want to be with me. And usually you would think from the outside that once you really see that and realize, especially since it's been going on for a long time, that the Nancys of the world would be like, all right, well, let's move towards breaking up, pack my bags, move towards divorce, whatever. In my experience, what happens is when you make that determination, especially if the relationship is long, especially if you have kids, that begins the process that can take months, years, perhaps, of actually taking the steps to break up, calling a lawyer and these kinds of things. It's such a big decision. So I learned long ago that that's how things are. And so, because in the beginning of my practice, when I would hear that, I would approach the client assuming that, well, if they said that to me, they must be soon to leave, or it's stable, right? Because another thing that would happen is, again, months, if not years of contemplation, working on things, mostly sure that it's not going to work out. And then there's that session where they're like, yeah, it's over. Usually what will happen is that'll last for a few weeks, and then they come in another session and they're like, you know what? We kind of had a good week and it makes me have hope. And she said this or he said that, which makes me think maybe things will work. And I don't want to lose this person, and maybe things won't work out, but I think this is worth trying. Then they go through another couple months of that, and then things fizzle, or things get better. Sometimes that happens, but if things fizzle, then again, you re-engage in that thinking process of, I think it's over, and then that takes time. It takes a long time. It's a messy road. It's a bumpy road. It's full of confusion. There are times when you're very sure, and then other times you're like not so sure. So that's normal. And for her, it's been a pretty short amount of time. So I just want to normalize that for her. She's pretty sure it's not going to work. She doesn't feel very loved. All the signs are there, but she wants to still fight.
I hate crying.
The other thing to think about, well, first I'll say is, I don't know why she hates crying. I would say to her, crying is as natural as laughing or going to the bathroom or being hungry. It's a biological thing. It's very fundamental to our psychology and biology. So why do you hate it? It's necessary. It's healthy. I would not have a adversarial relationship with your body and your mind and your soul and your emotions. So that's just my recommendation. But often people will say they hate crying because of the way that people react to them. So it's not that they hate crying, it's they hate the way people will be like, oh my God, you're crying, or everything's going to be okay, the anxiety that people experience. Anyway. But the other thing to think about is that presumably the people on the show were having trouble meeting people, finding the one in the real world. So the prospect of having this not work out and going back to Tinder and Bumble and the bars and all that kind of stuff, I'm guessing for them, they're like, ugh, what's the alternative here? So if there's a chance that this will work, I should fight for it, because it's not like there's this sure other alternative to finding my partner. So
regrets, right? Like, I felt like I could love you. I proposed to you. It didn't work out. But do you have any regrets?
I do not regret saying no to you. The one thing that people kept saying about you was like, Andrew's so smart. And I was like, is he? Like, maybe I didn't.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking too. That people kept saying that he was, I don't know how smart he is and what is smart. There's a lot of different aspects of what we would consider to be intelligence. He talked like an intelligent person. He could have been intelligent, but there was nothing that he was saying to me that I was just like, whoa, yeah, smart. The way he's able to draw connections between things and how fast he is on his feet, his emotional intelligence, because he certainly didn't have that. By the way, the last time we saw Andrew was when he was having the eye drops. And after I watched that scene, as I was watching it, I was reacting, and I'm just like, it looks like he's trying to fake the tears, but I'm not quite sure, because if he was trying to fake tears, you think he would step away from the camera, do that, come back on camera so that no one would know, the producers and the camera people would know that he was using eye drops. And so I thought either he's really stupid or has no idea how reality TV works. That was the other thing I thought. It's like, if he is trying to fake, does he think that the producers will protect him by not showing that footage? I could see someone that has no idea about reality TV, which is kind of the way I was. Before y'all asked me to watch, I watched Love is Blind season 1, and I thought, on a whim, one, it was kind of on a whim to watch it to begin with, because the lockdown happened in early 2020, and I heard all these people talking about it, and I was just like, well, me and my wife are like, we're stuck inside, we can't do anything. So I was like, well, I guess we'll check out this show. And I never had really watched reality TV, did the reaction videos, it blew up. And then y'all wanted me to watch 90 Day Fiance, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. Honestly, it's been really interesting. I realize now that prior to me watching reality TV in earnest, I had a lot of preconceived notions about it, which were partly true, but not entirely. I would tend to just dismiss the whole thing. It's just like, it's just this ridiculous nonsense stuff. But there's actually a lot of really interesting things that happens on these shows. You kind of have to look for it and wait for it, because there's a fair amount of fluff at times. Anyway, so if you had asked me prior to learning about reality TV and because a lot of it is like guessing at what the producers are trying to put out there, right? I might have thought that producers were on the cast member side back then, but I don't think they really are, right? They're on their own side, and they will use the cast members, I think, in general, for their own marketing needs, meaning that if they have bad footage of you that they think will play well with the audience, they're going to show it for sure, right? So I don't know if Andrew was in that camp. And then the other possibility was like, well, maybe when he cries, he gets dry eyes. He has like a problem or something. That's possible as well. They also kind of edited it a little interestingly, where he had the cascading tears, and then a little bit later he didn't. And I don't know, there's just a lot of questions. He could be that narcissistic and or that unintelligent and unaware and ignorant. Like, that is a possibility, but it's so out there that to me, I'm like, it's more likely something else. It's possible. But anyway, so afterwards, me and my wife will talk, because she'll watch the show upstairs while I'm recording in my office, and we'll talk about it. And she was just like, can you believe that Andrew guy? And I'm like, well, yeah, it sort of looked like it could have been that, but it could have been. My wife was like, no, that was like fake. And she was convinced that he was trying to fake these tears. And I was just like, oh, was I not really picking up on that well? And I'm guessing a lot of y'all thought that too. I don't know. So there's that. And the way he talked in the pods, he just would frequently talk about his traveling, and yeah, I've been to Africa, and I've been to Europe, and I've been, all these various different places. The way that people talk when they're trying to impress, which isn't a very smart thing to do. If you're really trying to impress someone, you wouldn't talk like you're trying to impress someone, right? And if you're trying to come across as smart, you're not going to be so unsmart to try to come off as smart in a very not so smart way, if that makes any sense. Anyway. So yeah, I appreciate Nancy saying, I don't really see it. Now, I don't think Andrew is some incredibly unintelligent person, but there wasn't anything in there that said like, whoa, he's off the charts. But anyway, so Andrew is now, I think, trying to get Nancy, or at least test the waters. And Nancy, I don't know if I showed it, but she's like, I don't regret saying no to you. So it's still no, Andrew. But they're having a conversation.
Catch that.
So after all that you've seen these past couple weeks, does it still feel like the right decision?
Absolutely. I think the thing about me and Bartise is we vibe off each other so emotionally, but
What? So this is the part of the show where I'm like, is this real? Because, and I've talked about this before, but after season 2, it became really kind of aggravating to me over time. And I keep bringing it up, but particularly the way I was watching Val and Sal, I think, or Mal and Sal, Mallory and Sal. Their relationship seemed dunzo at a certain point. And I can't believe I just said the word dunzo. Why did I say that? But the relationship seemed done, and yet they had several episodes and scenes where they're like, yeah, it's not done. And there didn't seem to be anything there, right? And then he said no on the altar when I was like, she seems more like the no. And she said yes. I don't know. This is just me making a conspiracy theory, but the way I saw that, and I asked my wife about this, and she didn't really relate to it. So it could just be in my head. I don't know. But the way I saw that, and it started getting me questioning a lot of things that happened. So here's my theory, and I've talked about this before, but I think it applies here as well, is that they legit fall in love in the pods. There's a chance that some of them, maybe Shake, for example, they're like, well, no, I don't really love Deep D. I'm not really going to marry her, but I want to be on a reality show, so let's go for it. I don't know. But I think a good portion of them legit fall in love in the pods. They meet in the hallway. It's overwhelming, a lot of feelings. They get engaged. Then they go on the honeymoon, and pretty quickly you will see some couples differentiate from others, where right away there's fighting, or right away there's like, yeah, I don't really feel it the way I did in the pods. You'll hear these little, like, I'm not really quite sure. Things are a little cold. We're still trying to warm things up. I'm working on it. And then you'll hear this progression, and we only see these little snippets of time. So there's a fair amount of time that goes by. And my suspicion is that for some of them, which would make total sense, pretty quickly they're like, yeah, no, this is not going to work. I am 99% sure that, no, I'm not going to marry this person. They seem like a lovely person, but no. And they either keep that to themselves, or they talk about it amongst themselves. They might even fight behind closed doors and say like, no, you are not the one. You're not the one either, whatever. Then they are faced with the contract of the show and the pressure from the producers or whatever. And because from my understanding is they're highly pressured to end up in the wedding scene. Because I think the producers think that you gotta have the wedding scene. It has to come to there, right? And you have to have the suspense building up to that. I don't agree. I think it would be just as viable and more believable and more watchable and more interesting if the individuals, when they made that choice, like Shayna, actually. Shayna was in love with, or, whatever, Shane. She gets rejected, and then she chooses option number 2, which what's his name, Nick, I think? And she's kind of on the fence. You could really tell. And then she meets him in person, and she's like, yeah, no. And then she goes home. So she actually, I think, completely broke from the script and was like, yeah, I can't fake this. I can't lie. So I'm going home because no. So she was the one person that did that. So we just imagine that would happen. I mean, what's the chance that all of them only realize when they're on the altar? What's the chance that plenty of them would realize earlier than that, right? Okay. But then because of either internal sort of pressures they put on themselves, or they make an agreement with their partner where they're just like, well, let's write it out, and will you say yes? Will you say no? That kind of thing. And we'll work it out. And because we don't want to ruin the show, or we don't want to be written off of the show, because that could happen as well, because this is all shot and then they edit it and post it. And, everything will be fine. And because some of the families, they don't even come to the wedding, right? And I suspect that some of them even tell their family, look, don't come because this isn't real. But don't tell anyone. I don't know. This is just me making stuff up. I could be completely making things up, right? But it sounds plausible, right? And when I'm watching and I see the individuals making very strange flip-flops, I'm like now thinking, am I seeing that happen again? So when Nancy right now says, no, I don't regret it at all, we're totally a good match, I'm like, that does not match with reality at all. We just got off of a scene where she was crying, and she's been suffering from Bartise from day one since they met in person. I mean, the things that he's said, the way she's looked at him repeatedly, and he's not attracted to her and he doesn't want to be with her. He's pretty vocal about that. And she's like, I want to fight, but this looks over. And then she says this to Andrew. It just makes, I don't want to question Nancy's integrity, but as a viewer myself, I'm just like, what? Did we miss? And we could have missed something, but let's rewatch. Now, if she said something like, look, I don't regret choosing Bartise, and I don't regret saying no to you, because that was where I was at the time. And honestly, I don't think you and I would work anyway, Andrew, all things equal. But with Bartise, there's some issues. I'm hoping things will work out. I'm fighting. There's some signs it won't work out, but I'm still fighting. If she said something like that, I'd been like, okay. But the way she responds here, I'm like, how is that true?
Maybe I didn't catch that.
So after all that you've seen these past couple weeks, does it still feel like the right decision?
Absolutely. I think the thing about me and Bartise is we vibe off each other so emotionally, but he's fading physically from.
Okay, I jumped the gun. I'm so dumb. So, yeah, okay. I guess I'm just really sensitive to being strung along and lied to by these shows, which I feel like, I don't know, it felt like with Mal and Sal, I was really watching, what? And or there was something else that happened behind the scenes that was just completely not shown to us. Anyway, but so she's saying pretty much what I was like. If she just said that, that'd be fine. So I paused it too soon because I'm an impulsive, reactionary person.
Me? Bartise told me that I wasn't his type. He wants tall. He wants blonde. He wants fitness model.
Wow.
I was like,
Okay, so that's what he said to her. I mean, well, who knows what he said to her, but that's what Nancy interpreted. But we can imagine him saying that. I mean, my dogs are barking. Really? You meet someone that's not blonde, they have everything else, and you're like, nah, she's not blonde. Yeah, I mean, that fits in line with one hypothesis. I really do not know if this is close to the mark, but I've thrown it out there that for whatever reason, and we could imagine what those are, he has a mindset that he's choosing his partner based on the way it makes him look, not based on the way they connect and their bond. It's about walking down the street or Instagram or whatever and how she will look and how it will reflect on him in a self-centered, insecure way. It just sounds that way, doesn't it? I mean, why would you? And he everything he says is just along those lines, right? The way he talked about Raven, and he literally even said, yeah, when I walk into a room, women look at me, and when Raven walks into a room, and she's the person I should be with. And in the pods, he said that the reason why he was on this show is because his normal way of determining a partner hasn't worked out. So you'd think he would think twice about whether or not this is a right mindset to have. But anyway, he can have his criteria. It's not immoral. It's his life. He's probably shooting himself in the foot. It's probably harming him more than anyone else.
I think it just sucks that the person that I love so much doesn't love me as much as I love him.
Yeah, and makes me sad for Nancy. But honestly, watching it, I'm like, at least you found out earlier than later, so you can find your person. So yeah.
I never would have gave a fuck if it was any other person that I dated in the real world. But I think the fact that this is a person who made a promise to me, a person who proposed, and I'm like, what the fuck are you here for?
Yeah, I understand that feeling. It's like you made a promise and I opened my heart up to you because you made that promise. I made that promise. I get that. And you'll hear people say that, right? That you said you wanted to be with me forever. There'll be an anger, which makes sense. And sometimes people change their minds and you can't really do much about that. Do we believe that Bartise made that commitment without thinking about it fully? Maybe. Do we think he made the commitment thinking that he would not feel that way forever? I don't think so. I think he legit thought that Nancy was the one in the pods.
Me. Like, it's fine. It's fine.
It's not fine, but it'll be okay. If you ever need anything, just know that I'm there.
Thank you.
I mean, it all depends on how Nancy received what Andrew just said. It wasn't the worst, right? On these shows, you'll hear people say, "Stop crying, everything will be okay," or I don't know, other kinds of things. But I don't know. It wasn't what I was hoping Andrew would say. I don't know what I thought he would say, but it's not. He says, "No, it's not fine," which is a good thing to say because she's like, "Everything's fine, everything will be okay," and so he's like, "No, it's not fine." A good message, and then. But everything will be okay. I wouldn't say that to someone when they're suffering, even if you think they might want to hear it. It's a risk because it kind of discounts the whole thing, right? So let's say that your partner dies or your parents die or something, and it's the next day and you're crying about it, and someone says like, "Yeah, I get it, you're in pain, but things will get better." You're like, "Well, duh, but." What? Like, that's not where I'm at right now. What I need is someone to be with me, not saying that, because maybe things won't get better. Maybe I'll always be suffering in one way or another. Like, what do you know about this? Or now, maybe that would help for her to hear.
It's not fine, but it'll be okay. If you ever need anything, just know that I'm there.
And then that last bit, again, not a terrible thing to say, but it's the sort of thing you say to someone as you're saying goodbye. Or there's a lot of talk online about what you should and should not say when someone is suffering. And to me, it's not what you're saying, it's what you're communicating and how it's being received. So if I were Nancy and I heard those three statements, like, "No, it's not fine," I would feel like, okay, good, he's validating me. And then the "everything will be fine," I would feel like, well, you're kind of rushing things a little bit, and I'm suffering right now. Can we just live in that space for a little bit? It sounds like you're trying to rush me along, or that's how I would feel. And then if you ever need anything, just let me know. I would feel like, I don't know if you really mean that, right? And it sounds like something you say as a way of trying to soothe yourself or trying to, I don't know, what is it about that statement, the way it's, now, you can say that, and if you really mean it, like if he said something like, "Hey, if you ever need anything, let me know, because I'm serious. I like you, and even if we're just friends, like, I want to be there for you. And whether it's tomorrow or next month or whatever, like, if you want to talk, I'm a great listener." If he said something like that, I think it would be great if he said something like that. But the way he says it, I don't know. A lot of people will say that without follow through. If you've ever been through a loss or something like this, you'll hear a lot of people say that, like, "Hey, if you need anything, let me know." And over time, you learn that a lot of people say that, but they don't really mean it, right? They're not really willing to put in the effort to see if you need anything, right? Because most people, so here's a little tip as well. If someone's suffering that you know and you want to help them, just saying, "Hey, if you need anything, let me know." They probably will, even if they want you to help them, they probably won't ask because they've been taught by our society that they shouldn't do that or whatever. They don't want to impose. And so you have to offer more or make it easier for them to ask for help. If you're close enough to someone, sometimes you can just sort of force help on them if you know that they really want it, right? You just go over to the house and cook food for them or whatever. Use caution with that because you don't want to be invasive. But on the scale of things, though, Andrew's response was better than average for these shows that I watched.
What were you guys talking about?
We're just catching up.
Yeah.
Should I have something to be worried about, I never thought I would feel, like, defensive, but I do feel defensive here.
Okay. Again, normal for him to see these two talking from afar and to get a little upset, a little jealous, a little possessive, if you will. How do you communicate that? It does seem kind of weird or strange that he is having those feelings, since he has clearly stated for a long time that he has no attraction to Nancy and doesn't want to be with her. But, so is it a humiliation thing, or I don't know.
I feel like we're just talking.
I'm just confused. I'm just confused. Unless she tells me not to be worried, I'm gonna be worried.
There's nothing to be worried about. She'll tell you not to be worried. Look at her in the eyes.
Okay. I'm not gonna be worried.
I think they all handled it well. Nancy and Andrew handled it pretty well. That was good. That's another thing about this show that is different from 90 Day Fiancé. His reactivity seemed a little pushed, but theirs seemed more normal. Because I feel like on 90 Day Fiancé, there'd be something would happen, a drink in someone's face or something. Now, I'm not saying those aren't real, but I don't know. When I watch this show, it just feels more relatable. I don't know. All right, well, that is for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.